Bienvenidos, Ushamdeed, and welcome to this Hut 8 Consulting Techtorial on Cisco's Enterprise Networking, Security, and Automation course, ENSA, which is part of the CCNA version 7 curriculum. In this packet tracer activity, we're going to focus on packet tracer 10.7.6, where we're going to see how to upgrade a Cisco iOS server using a Tftp server. And more importantly, in this video, I'm going to show you and answer the #1 question that learners ask right out of the gate, and that is, how do I get a Cisco iOS image for the router or the switch that I might have? And so I'm going to cover that as well. We're going to show you, we're going to talk a little bit about what an entitlement is and how you would get an entitlement. So let's go ahead and dive in here to this packet tracer activity. And as you can see, it's going to be very straightforward here. So we're going to be using this TFTP server here off to the right to upgrade the Cisco iOS image on one of these routers here. And so let's go ahead and dive right in. It says access the TFTP server and enable the TFTP service. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on the TFTP server. You can see here it actually lists out the services right away, and there is TFTP. We can see that TFTP is currently in the off status. So we're going to change that status to on. Now, there are a number of images in here. You can see they've got a really old ASA firewall. This was for the 5505 series and around that time frame. And again, with the CCNA curriculum, we were using the 5505. You can see that they've got 923, right, which is a much more recent version of the ASA/OS for the Cisco firewalls. And then we get into some of the router images here. Now, it's asking us which iOS images stored on the server are compatible with a 1941 router. Well, we see two of them right here. And again, remember, they've got that C1900, and so that's going to be for all of the 1900 series routers. Again, these 1841s, these are no longer a supported platform. These are referred to as the ISR G1s, and then the 1900s are the ISR G2 series of Cisco routers. So I see two images here. If we scroll down a little bit further, you can see we've got some other images. Let's make sure there aren't any other 1900 images. There are not. So it's just these two, 15.1 and 15.5. And again, we want to stay with the current vendor recommended iOS version. Well, we're limited to these here, so let me show you where you would go to look, because this is very, very important. And even if you don't have what's called an entitlement to download the software, you can at least see what the most recent vendor recommended version of Cisco iOS software is for your platform. And we'll take a look at another ISR G2 platform, the 2900 series. So let me pull my web browser up here. You can see I'm already logged in. I'm just at cisco.com. All you would need is an account. If you go to cisco.com and you don't have an account, you can actually create an account for yourself. And so when I log in, you can see it's got the TB there for Travis Bonfili. And here, right dead center on the landing page, is a link for software downloads. So I'm going to click on software downloads. It's going to take me to this page here. You can see some of my previous downloads. And again, the 1900, and in fact, let's do that. We'll take a look at the 1900 series because we're talking about that right now. So you can see right here, 1900 series Integrated Services Router, the ISR. That's what that ISR stands for. So I'm going to click on Integrated Services Router for the 1900 series, and we're talking about a 1941. You can see there's a 1905, a 1906, a 1921, and a 1941W, right? It has some wireless capabilities, but let's click on the 1941 Integrated Services Router. And you can see there's an SRE service module, right? A module that we could install into that 1941 chassis, and maybe it has some switching ports into it, right? So these are modules that add functionality to the base functionality of the 1900 series router, or the 1941 in our case. but we're interested in the software on the chassis. Now, this is where it gets a little bit confusing, right? But we are just looking for iOS software. And so that's what our focus is going to be here. Again, you can see you can download the Cisco Network Assistant, all kinds of sort of add-ons here. But we want to get the iOS software. Now, this is where we can see that they've got the suggested releases. So 15.7.3M, and you can tell they're suggested releases as I hover over the star, that gold star there, or I should say the gold circle with the star figure in the center. This is going to be how you can identify the Cisco suggested release of software, right? Based on quality, stability, and longevity. And I typically always go with the higher number for the recommended releases when there are more than one, or when there is more than one code train that you can see here. So we've got 15.7 and 15.6. I would go with 15.7. Now you can see we've got the universal here. Let me hover over that. We get some release notes. We can see that this was just actually released 5 days ago, right? On 16 September 2020. So very, very recent release. We've got some minimum memory requirements. We've got the size of the image, the checksum, and some release notes or field notices that you definitely want to take a look at before you would install this onto a production system. And then to download this image, and you can see here it also has the DRAM and flash requirements. To download this image, I would simply click here, accept the license agreement, and let's see if it allows me to download that image. You can see the little thing flew to the side there. And there it is. And so I've just downloaded that new image. And so now what I would do is I would put that onto my TFTP server in the directory that the TFTP server has configured for TFTP transactions. And that's a great segue now right back into this activity. Now, a quick go back here. When I did that download, if I did not have an entitlement, meaning if I didn't have a router that was under a current service contract with Cisco of that model, what it would have done is it would have given me an error saying, hey, you don't have an entitlement to download this software, and so you need to get one, meaning you need to put one of the routers that we have under a current service contract that is a 1900 series router. All right, so back to our activity here. We can see that it wants us to jump onto R2 and issue the show flash command and record the availability of flash memory. So let's click on R2. We're going to bring that window down here, give ourselves a little bit more room with which to work. And, oops, we'll bring that over this way. And so here we are on router number 2. And let's go ahead and say show flash. And so you can see here, it shows us how many bytes have been used, how many bytes are available, and how many total bytes. And again, you can see in here we've got the 1900 to the 1514M4 image is what we currently have. And so we clearly are going to want to upgrade that. And there's a note here, in an actual network, if there's more than one interface active on the router, we might need to enter the IP TFTP source interface command. That's a huge value add right there, because in most cases, you're going to have a router with more than a single interface on your network. So keep that in mind, that IP TFTP source command is very important. All right, so we issued the show flash. Now what we're going to say is we're going to say copy from the TFTP server into our flash directory. And again, the IP address is 192.168.2.254, and then the file name, right? Now, this could be a lot of typing, prone to typos. I am a huge fan of not having typos. And so we're going to go ahead and copy and then paste that image. Now, you can type it in by hand. It's going to take you some time. And as you can see, we've got uppercase and lowercase letters in there. We've got numbers, dashes, periods. So cutting and pasting, when available, is a great idea to save yourself a lot of heartache. I'm going to hit enter here. We're going to connect to that TFTP server. You can see these exclamation marks indicating, hey, I'm transferring the file from the TFTP server into Flash. Now, you can say show Flash. That's one way to do it. I could also just say dir, because by default, that's going to list out the Flash directory for me. And let's see if they support this here. Yeah, if I say dir ? Using my context-sensitive help, you can see that it shows me if I wanted to see, well, what do we have out on Flash 1? Maybe you've got a memory card in the Flash 1 slot. For USB sticks, maybe you've got a USB stick inserted into the router. It would be USB 0, USB Flash 1. There's different names that you'll see. And so the dir ? command is a great way to see what those other options might be. All right, so we've got the image on our router. Now, it's not enough, and this is very, very important. It's not enough to just simply put the new image into Flash, and then what if I said reload, right? Because I have some learners that think, well, I'm just going to put the image into the Flash, not delete the other previous image, the 15.4.1 image, and I'm going to hit reload. And by me doing that, what's going to happen is if I was to say, let's say show run, I'm sorry, not show run, we're going to say, well, actually, let me show you what the listing is here. So you can see the listing here is that is the first file listed when I say dir, meaning when I just simply hit reload, if there's no configuration settings dictating which iOS file that this router should use to boot, it will pick the first one listed. And this is also true on the ASA firewalls, right? If you have multiple images and you do not have the boot system flash command, 99.9% of the time, the first image that's listed when you type dir, that is going to be the image that the router is going to select when it goes to boot up. In fact, if I scroll back up here just a skosh, let's see if it gave us, yeah, and there it is right there. That is the image file that was used to boot this router. Because again, we've got it here listed first. If I say show run, I'm going to be looking for this boot system flash command that we see over here. That is the command. And there was a license boot command, but that's different. And you can see there is no boot system command. These license options here enable certain functionality, certain licenses for this ISR G2 router, but there is no boot system flash command. So if I had 30 iOS images in here, again, probably going to run out of space, but let's say for the sake of argument that I could get 10 iOS images on this router in the flash directory, but that was the first one that was listed when I say dir, it's going to pick that iOS image each time it boots if I don't have the boot system flash command, which again is a nice segue here to the next part of this activity, is we need to get into global config here because I've got multiple files and I need to say boot system flash, and I always put the colon in there. And then we could just simply scroll right back up here. Let's see how far it was back and grab that text so that we're making sure we have no typos, because there's nothing worse than typing it out, reloading the router, and on a real router waiting maybe up to 4 to 5 minutes for that router to boot, only to find out you've got a typo in the boot system flash command and it went ahead and booted to a different iOS version. So, oops, sorry, let me pull back the space here. So there we go. So when I put the colon there, you'll notice that here it shows we don't need we don't need to have the iOS image name right next to flash, and that's because there's no colon. When you use the colon, you want to keep it right next to it. But again, we're going to achieve the same thing. So here's 2 ways that you could do this. Before I do that, very important that we save the configuration. I'm going to use the write memory command. You could also say copy running config to startup config, but again, you can see that write mem, and really I think all you have to do is wr me, and that's going to get it done. So we've got that boot system flash command saved, so now the router knows which of the multiple iOS images that are in flash, which image to use to boot this router. So let's reload again. And this is one of the beauties of Packet Tracer, right? It's going to go ahead and reload for us in record time, unlike a real Cisco iOS router. And you can see here, if I was to scroll back up just a skosh, that we are now booting that 15.5 release. In fact, let's see another way to do that by simply typing show version, and we'll let this run out here. You can see we've got a bunch of licenses down here. The security license, the data license, right? These are not enabled. We've got the IP base K9, right? So that's just going to give us basic functionality. If I wanted to do any IPsec, I would have to have that security bundle enabled. If I wanted to do MPLS, I would have to have the data bundle enabled, or the license, I say bundle, but the license enabled. And so if we scoot back up here, right here you can see system image file. There is the file that's being used to boot this router. Now you might be saying, well, why not just delete the old iOS image? Get that off of there. Just keep this one and then just type in reload, right? Because if there's only this iOS image in the flash, then it's going to boot using that iOS image. And you're absolutely right, it would do that. But let me ask you this. What if you have issues with this iOS? What if there's a bug of some kind that's immediately impacting your operations and you want to roll back thinking, wow, I wish I would have kept that previous iOS? Because what if there's a problem to where the router might not boot or it crashes? Because if you're thinking, oh, well, I'll just get the old image off the TFTP server. Well, what if it's so bad that you can't get the router to boot and stay up for any period of time long enough to get that image TFTP, the old image, the original image TFTP'd, to kind of save yourself? And so that's why we're going to go ahead and leave. I always leave. This is sort of a personal best practice on my part. Whatever the previously used image was, I leave it in flash. And then I upgrade to the new image and we let that run and we keep a close eye on that. Because if we start to have any issues, we can always roll back by simply changing the boot system flash command and then reloading the router. And we're saving ourselves from having to go back out to the TFTP server, pull this image down. We can make that change quickly. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to upgrade the iOS image on a switch, and it's done in much the same fashion. So we're going to access the TFTP server. We're going to get the C2960 LAN base, right, for switch number 1 here. And now we can move through the rest of this activity a little quicker because we know the steps that are going to be required. Copy TFTP:// and the IP address is 192.168.2.254, and the source file name, well, they gave it to us right here. So let's go ahead and let's copy this, and we'll say copy will come down here. Excuse me. Paste that in here, hit enter, and again, it takes a couple seconds to connect, but then once it does, and you can see switch iOS files much smaller than the router iOS files. And so here's what we've got, and I like this. I like what we're doing here, right? This was originally running the 12.2 version of code. We're going to get it up to the 15.x train, right, of code. And so what do we have to do? We get into global config, we say boot system // and then we're going to, actually, we've already got that in our buffer. We'll hit enter. We're going to save our configuration, and then we're going to reload. Right? So for router 1, you can see we've got red upside down triangles here because the switch providing connectivity to everyone is down. So if I was to hustle over here to router 1, and let's see if we can make this happen here. And on router 1, this is not a 2900 series. This is a 4300 series router. And so if I say dir, you can see that we've got the 4300 series router version of the Cisco IOS XE. And let's go ahead and see if I can run this real quick. So we'll say copy TFTP colon into flash colon remote host 192.168.2.254. And let's drop this file name in here. And I missed it. I was going to try to get this all knocked out before those triangles turned green and we were able to exchange traffic between router 1 and the TFTP server. And hold on just one second. Are we backing up here? I may be going backwards here. Display the contents. We want to back up the image. I'm sorry. I was trying to copy the image. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to bail out of there. I wasn't paying too close of attention. So let's back up this image to the TFTP server. So we got to switch the order, right? So copy flash to TFTP. And then the source file name, again, we still have that in our buffer, right? And always a good idea to keep a backup copy of your iOS files, 192.168.2.254. And it's going to take a second to connect, and we should be good to go. And let's go ahead here. And again, these images are much larger, as you can see. In fact, to give you an idea, let's come back over here and let's come up here to routers and let's take a look at all the routers. Let's do a branch router, and you can see we've got the 4000 series routers, and here is a 4331. And let's take a look at the iOS XE software, and you can see how many software packages you have to, or software options you have to pick from for different functionality, but the base iOS XE software is right here, 612 megabytes in size. So this file is almost, 3/4 of a gig in size. And these are the different branches that we can pick from. And you can see here Gibraltar 1612 and Fuji 16.9, so named after mountains. To download this, let's see if I've got the option to download this. I should have this under my service contract. And again, you'll see that it takes off there. If I come up here, you can clearly see pretty good internet connection here. So at my home office, and we get the file pretty quickly. But again, much larger, right? 81 megabytes compared to 612 megabytes. And the image that they're using here is right around 486 megabytes. So here we are back on router 1. Again, it finished. Our completion percentage is 100. Let's access that TFTP server, and let's double check to make sure that ISR, and you can see here we're kind of in alphabetical order, and maybe we need to quit out, and let's open that back up again, come to TFTP, and we should see, where are we at here? ISR 4300, and I just didn't go far enough maybe, and there it is right there. All right, so again, some very important value adds into this video. An entitlement. You have to have a support contract under your current Cisco profile that you can sign up for free, right? Or if you're affiliated with a corporation, you would have access to that. But those support contracts, you need to have those under your profile so that you can get to the software. That's your entitlement to download software. We looked at where we get the software, how we get the software, how we back it up, as well as the difference in size of the files between the vanilla iOS files and iOS XE files. All right, well, that's going to cover it for all of the topics that we were looking for in this video. That covers everything, I should say. And we saw how to use a TFTP server to upgrade an iOS image and how to back up an iOS image. All right, thank you so much for watching. All the best of luck to you in your studies, and I hope to see you in the next video.